Thanks for coming. My name is Caitlin Horrocks. I'm a writer of fiction and creative nonfiction primarily, and then I also teach writing at Grand Valley State University. There is a handout that looks like this. There's piles of it in chairs at the back on both sides if you don't have it. The samples here are all creative writing. I'm going to be talking with a lot of examples from creative writing, but the sort of techniques and strategies that we're talking about are applicable beyond that, certainly applicable beyond fiction or poetry, to a variety of writing challenges. So I'm calling this Writing Effective Descriptions, the Telling Detail. First example, a piece of description of maybe dubious effectiveness, although it's actually from a book that I love, from 1851. It goes on really long. Entering that gable-ended spouter inn, you found yourself in a wide, low, straggling entry with old-fashioned wainscots reminding one of the bulwarks of some condemned old craft. On one side hung a very large oil painting, so thoroughly besmoked and every way defaced that in the unequal crosslights by which you viewed it, it was only by diligent study and a series of systematic visits to it that you could in any way arrive at an understanding of its purpose. It goes on for about 10 more lines about the painting. Continuing on about the painting is this: what most puzzled and confounded you was a long, limber, portentous, black mass, 4 adjectives for 1 noun, of something hovering in the center of the picture over 3 blue, dim, perpendicular lines floating in a nameless yeast. A boggy, soggy, squidgy picture truly enough to drive a nervous man distracted. Yet there was a sort of indefinite, half-attained, unimaginable sublimity about it that fairly froze you to it till you involuntarily took an oath with yourself to find out what that marvelous painting meant. It goes on for 2 more paragraphs about the painting. And then our character very slowly looks at the other wall of the entryway, and then describes for another couple paragraphs what he sees on that wall, and then he slowly enters this inn and describes what he sees at the bar. And this chapter's now gone on for about 3 pages, and the main action is somebody walking into a room. Would you stick with this as a reader? If you were reading not for a class, not for an assignment, just on your own time. Does anyone recognize this book? There are whales in it. There's 1 whale in particular. So this is Moby Dick by Herman Melville, which I do genuinely love, but it is an undertaking to read. And he's certainly writing in a moment and in a style that readers were more patient with at the moment he was writing, and in fact still weren't that patient with him. This book did not do that well when it first came out. And we read it kind of now knowing, okay, here's what we're getting into. Here's what I'm taking on as a reader. For most of us, our readers are not approaching our work with that degree of patience. And we want to think about those moments not where we say, okay, long, limber, portentous black mass, a boggy, soggy, squitchy, although actually those are really fun to say together, boggy, soggy, squitchy. But thinking about, all right, if I'm not going to attach 4 adjectives to every noun, how am I choosing the 1 adjective that I do want? How am I sort of paring things down, being direct, but still being evocative and specific and powerful in my writing? A piece that I think does that really well is the top piece here. Again, if you don't have this handout, there's some in the chairs at the back on either side, and we're going to listen to Forche read it to us. Hopefully. It open. It was working.
This poem is a documentary poem. It comes from May 1978 in San Salvador, El Salvador. It contains an obscenity. I feel I should announce that in advance. I believe it contains actually 2 obscenities. The Colonel. What you have heard is true. I was in his house. His wife carried a tray of coffee and sugar. His daughter filed her nails. His son went out for the night. There were daily papers, pet dogs, a pistol on the cushion beside him. The moon swung bare on its black cord over the house. On the television was a cop show. It was in English. Broken bottles were embedded in the walls around the house to scoop the kneecaps from a man's legs or cut his hands to lace. On the windows there were gratings like those in liquor stores. We had dinner, rack of lamb, good wine. A gold bell was on the table for calling the maid. The maid brought green mangoes, salt, a type of bread. I was asked how I enjoyed the country. There was a brief commercial in Spanish. His wife took everything away. There was some talk then of how difficult it had become to govern. The parrot said hello on the terrace. The colonel told it to shut up and pushed himself from the table. My friend said to me with his eyes, "Say nothing." The colonel returned with a sack used to bring groceries home. He spilled many human ears on the table. They were like dried peach halves. There is no other way to say this. He took one of them in his hands, shook it in our faces, dropped it into a water glass. It came alive there. "I am tired of fooling around," he said. "As for the rights of anyone, tell your people they can go fuck themselves." He swept the ears to the floor with his arm and held the last of his wine in the air. "Something for your poetry, no?" he said. Some of the ears on the floor caught the scrap of his voice. Some of the ears on the floor were pressed to the ground.
I'll have a few questions for all of you as we go along here. And the one that I have now is, Forche introduces the piece by saying that there are two obscenities. The first is obviously when the colonel says, "Go fuck yourself," or fuck themselves. What is the other one? You all just came here for a presentation. You're like, I didn't know I was going to have to talk. It's not a word. It's not a linguistic obscenity, but the action, the fact that there are ears by the end of this poem. So obviously we're looking at the Poetry Foundation website. I've seen this piece anthologized as a piece of short fiction. I've seen it anthologized as a piece of nonfiction. And Forche has, in interviews and essays, spoken pretty publicly about how this is something very much that happened to her. She wrote it as a piece of sort of just raw experience, and then it was, she didn't know what to do with it. She couldn't sort of quite figure out how to make it more poem-like, and kind of stuck it in her book sheepishly, and then had people saying, this is the best piece in the book. Don't worry about it. That doesn't look like a regular poem. It is what it is, and what it is successful. And I think that a lot of what makes this piece successful is really, really effective description. Very stripped down in a way that Melville obviously isn't, but very, very precise in the things that she's choosing. So if we are looking at where do we get worried? Where are we like, oh, this is not just any dinner party. Pistol on the cushion. And that's not just that there's a gun in the house, but a pistol on a cushion is interesting juxtaposition too. It's not in a holster, it's not hidden, it's not it's on a cushion. So this kind of juxtaposition of something dangerous and something kind of soft. And then other juxtaposition in that paragraph, in that sentence, daily papers, pet dogs, a pistol on the cushion beside him. And that's coming right after that tray of coffee and sugar. Daughter filed her nails. Son went out for the night. Ordinary, ordinary, pleasant, pleasant. What else? Where else after that are we sort of, again, kind of a little startled, a little alarmed, a little intrigued? Broken bottles embedded in the walls around the house. So just the fact of it already, we're like, ugh. And then the way that that description extends to scoop the kneecaps from a man's legs or cut his hands to lace. So the fact, the observation is powerfully chosen, but this is a sentence where a little bit more description is really powerful. Not just the glass, but this is what the glass does. And words like scoop, words like lace are very powerful in that sentence. Other alarming things as we go. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Potential for danger and violence in this place. Yeah. But that sense of being startled or of that being sort of not what you expect. So this is a place where they eat green mangoes. And for most of us as readers, we are used to, that's not something that we would customarily eat. So there are moments like that, that again, alarming would not be the right word, but just sort of surprising, or that sense of, oh, okay, you know, we're not next door, we're not down the street. We're somewhere they're eating green mangoes. The fact, a line like, there was a brief commercial in Spanish, that's a really neutral sentence. But the fact that it, or even earlier, there was a cop show, it was in English. If we're watching a cop show in the US, we're probably not going to specify that it's in English. If it's mainstream American television, okay, it's in English. The fact that that is pointed out for us, and that then there's a brief commercial in Spanish, we're getting these cues that we maybe don't know where we are. And as readers, okay, this is a place, we're a little bit different. I have to figure out where we are. I have to think about, there's lovely things here. There's like rack of lamb and a little bell and good wine. And then there's the glass in the walls outside that could scoop a man's kneecaps. So throughout this sort of sense of discovery, like, okay, where are we? What is our degree of danger here? What is this just a totally ordinary night for these people? And we are only kind of ill at ease? Or is there real danger here, too? It's a piece that is keeping us on our toes as we read. And then again, that, like the colonel returned with a sack used to bring groceries home. He spilled many human ears on the table. Any idea? Again, there's 100 ways to say that. The colonel returned with a sack used to bring groceries home. There's 20 ways you could write that sentence. You could omit that sentence altogether. You could say the colonel went and got a bag and poured human ears on the table. The colonel went and got a brown paper bag. The colonel went and got a sack. The colonel went and got just anything. But a sack used to bring groceries home. Like, why specify that? It seems like maybe a low benefit detail to add, but it again just highlights, all right, it's a sack used to bring groceries home. Unlike the green mangoes, where maybe we're a little startled by it or sort of trying to figure out why they're eating that, everyone knows what a brown grocery sack looks like. Everyone exactly. It's a moment where we're plugged into the ordinariness of the moment, and then the ordinariness gets turned on its head. Took one of them in his hands, took it in his faces, dropped it in a water glass. It came alive there. Again, I mean, you could go really ghoulish with this moment. You could go kind of really over the top. It could be really gruesome. And the language stays really restrained. It came alive there. He swept the ears to the floor with his arm and held the last of his wine in the air. Something for your poetry, no, he said. Some of the ears on the floor caught the scrap of his voice. Some of the ears on the floor were pressed to the ground. This really kind of straightforward sentences. The vocabulary is not like reaching too hard. It's just, she knows when to keep it quiet, too. So, generalizations about effective details. I like to talk about the rule of three. I think a good detail, a good moment, a good adjective It's concrete. You can picture it. There's something that your mind can wrap around. You can see it happening. You can see what that would look like or what it would feel like. There's something kind of palpable about that description. It's convincing. We believe that it's true. We believe that it's real. If your reader just doesn't buy it, that's not an effective descriptive moment. And then 3 is the trickiest thing and the most important thing, which is that it's telling, that it is conveying some kind of important information. And it's really, really easy to include information that is concrete, especially if you're writing nonfiction. I mean, something could be very true, and okay, it's concrete and convincing. It's happened. But is it informative? Is it evocative? Is it powerful to the reader? And that's the harder test to meet. All right, which of the following, generally, if we were to see it, is more telling? 1, she had brown hair. 2, she had flowing chestnut-colored hair. 3, she had dyed brown hair. Physical show of hands here. Who wants to vote number 1? Who's going to vote 2? Who's going to vote 3? Anyone on team 2? Do you want to explain the votes? Flowing chestnut-colored hair. Okay, the flowing, what does it say about personality, the flowing chestnut? Maybe. Okay. Okay, so maybe telling us about temperament, occasion, age, possibly. Yeah. So a few of you voted 3. Anyone want to talk about that vote? Number 3, I'm with you on this one. So, I mean, 1, we're obvious. Okay, she had brown hair. A lot of people have brown hair. and that sentence is giving us nothing else. It's concrete and convincing. I'm sure lots of people have brown hair. But it's not really telling me anything about this person. Flowing chestnut-colored hair, it's telling me more. I can picture this person better. And arguably, yes. I mean, a woman that's wearing her hair flowing is maybe different or going somewhere different or different in age or personality than somebody who's got it, very tightly in a bun. It's not like void of information. But somebody who happens to have chestnut-colored hair and happens to be wearing it not in a bun, that's a lot of default decisions happening there too. A woman's hair is down unless she does something else to it. Somebody who is born with chestnut-colored hair, their hair is chestnut-colored unless they've chosen to alter it in some way. Number 3, that character has chosen to alter the way that her hair appears. And again, we don't know, you have no other context here. We don't know if that's because she prefers it or if she thinks it makes her look a certain way. If she's older and doing it to like cover up some gray. If she has a partner who thinks she looks really great with brown hair, so she's doing it to please somebody else. But there's something she's chosen to change about her appearance, which is potentially a very powerful piece of information about somebody, more powerful even than just wearing their hair down, which is the way your hair is when you get up in the morning. What about these? Once she stopped trying to keep it straightened, she and her hair came to a truce. She still had the same long black hair he'd been admiring since he first met her 20 years ago. She was the only person in her family with red hair, which her father was forever commenting on as if he might have found a justification to wash his hands of her, as if she was not his. For he had raven black hair and flashing green eyes. Which would you say is the least telling of these? Least telling, do you vote number 1? Any hands? Number 2? Number 3? Maybe? Number 4? Okay, and then some abstentions. Mostly people with 4. I am with you on this. Number 1, we're learning, again, it's just hair, but this is something about, the way that she feels about her hair. The way that she relates to it. Number 2, we've got something about time, not just who somebody is in a particular snapshot moment, but who somebody is over time and how somebody else relates to that. We've already got sort of a time span of 20 years and 2 separate characters. That's actually a lot happening in that sentence. Number 3, all of a sudden we've got this whole kind of family panorama. And we don't necessarily know how she feels about her red hair, but her father appears to have a lot of opinions about this red hair, which creates a tension between those 2 characters. There is information about family, information about character dynamic. 4, we've got, raven black hair, flashing green eyes. The information that's imparted in that is pretty much just black hair, green eyes, which again could be a lot of people. And then the additional information we get is not super telling. Okay, raven black hair, flashing green eyes. Raven black, it's right there, sort of it's a lot of romance heroes are going to show up with like raven black hair or damsels in distress. It's not, people have raven black hair, but it's not generally like the freshest way to describe that. Flashing green eyes, I mean, like, generally people do not actually have flashing green eyes. If somebody has like, gorgeous, like striking green eyes, there are probably other ways to say that than like flashing, which is just sort of like a neon sign, which eyes do not actually do. It's not a super informative sentence. An excerpt that is doing physical character description more effectively than that. This is on your handout. Extras in the back if you need one. This is from Dawn by Octavia Butler. She sat up, swayed dizzily, then turned to look at the rest of the room. The walls were light-colored, white or gray perhaps. The bed was what it had always been, a solid platform that gave slightly to the touch and that seemed to grow from the floor. There was, across the room, a doorway that probably led to a bathroom. She was usually given a bathroom. Twice she had not been, and in her windowless, doorless cubicle, she had been forced simply to choose a corner. She went to the doorway, peered through the uniform dimness, and satisfied herself that she did indeed have a bathroom. This one had not only a toilet and a sink, but a shower. Luxury. What else did she have? Very little. Okay, so I had misspoken. I said this was character description. It's setting description. What we have is the room of, a description of a room. But the description is really highly, I like to use the word inflected. Like there's a particular lens through which we are looking at this space. And the lens is a very particular character with a very particular take on this space. What do we not know? Anyone? Yeah, okay, why is she captive? That's a big question. There's no evidence available to us here. What else do we not know? Yeah. Yeah. We know very little about her beyond her captivity, which we don't have a lot of background to. We don't have any whys for. We know she's been captive before. We know that she is trapped in this space. We know that she's reacting to this space not as somebody who is like, oh my God, what is happening? But who's like, okay, there's a bathroom. That's something. Twice before there was no bathroom and she had to choose a corner. This is somebody who has been before in situations that would strike, I think, all of us as really bleak, as sort of terrifying. And instead we get this really matter-of-fact, swayed dizzily. I mean, yeah, she's not okay, but the walls were light-colored. The bed was what it had always been. There was a doorway that probably led to a bathroom, usually given a bathroom. Twice she had not been. Went to the doorway, peered through the uniform dimness, and satisfied herself that she did, indeed, have a bathroom. Not just a toilet and a sink, but a shower. Luxury. This is a moment, all we're getting is a really seemingly kind of dry description of a room with very little in it. But we're learning quite a bit about her very quickly. So moments that do kind of double or triple duty in a piece of writing. Ideally, a sentence or a moment isn't just doing one thing. It's telling us about the space, it's telling us about the character who occupies the space, And it's starting to tell us about, the situation here, the plot, the tension, what maybe has brought her to this space. And we don't get an answer to that. We don't even come close to an answer to that. But we're getting a lot quite quickly, while maintaining a kind of a feel of mystery and of worry, I think, for this character. So techniques that Butler is actually using, again, like packed really closely together. We see POV, description not just from some like hovery narrator, although even narrators pick and choose what to tell us. But in the Butler situation, I mean, it's third person, but it's this very close focus on how she is experiencing this space. In the Forchet poem, it's this, the description is organized around how this particular person is experiencing the space. She is a foreigner, she is a visitor. She's sort of trying to be on her best behavior and not sure how to respond to what's happening around her. And the description we get is very much kind of shaped and focused by that persona. Progression, we see that is more in the Forchet than the Butler, but we sort of start somewhere, and our understanding of the place or the person or the scenario is much different by the end. The writer is kind of parceling things out that, like, we're like, okay, puzzle pieces, puzzle pieces, puzzle pieces, starting to come together. Juxtaposition, surprising things together. So, pistol on a cushion, rack of lamb, broken glass. Here, this sort of just play, okay, bathroom, bed, light-colored walls, but somebody who, there is nothing else here. Kind of the tension between, okay, there's not much, there's not much in this room. Mystery suspense, but hopefully not too much. It's one of those tools we want to be careful of. You can leave your reader and your main character kind of in a state of confusion or uncertainty, but you have to think about, at what point is too much mystery, and the reader's like, I'm out. Showing versus telling, which is one of like the oldest, most traditional pieces of writing advice. It's so old now that it's inspired this whole backlash of like, of course, sometimes you want to tell. And sometimes, certainly, you do. Sometimes there is absolutely nothing wrong with telling your reader very bluntly something that you have to say. But more often, if we want the reader to sort of experience a piece, to be able to see a world, kind of walk through it, appreciate it or notice it in a really vivid three-dimensional way, we want to build that world for them. And we want to do it generally with showing, with descriptions. And then context, which an 8-year-old with pigtails is different than an 80-year-old with pigtails. That's a choice. I mean, it's just a way to wear your hair, but it reads differently to the people around that character. And the character making that decision at 8 years old, maybe at 8 years old that was not even that character's decision. Somebody else has done their hair that way. And then the much older woman choosing to wear her hair that way. That reads differently, depending on who's around that character, the society, the time and place that that character occupies. Yeah, and different hairstyles, I mean, in different centuries, are going to read differently. I mean, hair down would be totally unacceptable at a different point in time. Another example this time in a more traditional poem. More traditional than Forchet. Excuse me. Beirut by John Freeman. So again on the sheet. That rusting water tower collapsing on its ruin was the movie theater, where you sat in smoky consternation while James Bond lit his cigarettes. This mirrored shopping mall selling push-up jeans and gleaming watches used to be the market, where you could buy za'atar for small change. Here on this corner, where your father explained to a gun in his mouth that he was driving back to the apartment to pick up the dog you left behind. Here is the apartment you gave to the head of the 2e Bureau, because when such a man asked for a favor, he did not ask, and you did not say no. This corner, where the sea shines in the near distance, is where a friend was shot through the mouth and wondered as she lay if another bullet would come. Over here at that shop where we found the mother of pearl table is the hotel where snipers played God, and the flies on the corpses in the street rippled when the fallen were merely wounded and still fair game. Here, where everywhere was somewhere else, and the street signs point to Paris, and the light is not to be trusted. It has been so easily redirected. So we orient through the night, following the wind, listening for a sudden noise, waiting for the taste of ashes. I did not mean to make all these excerpts sort of so gloomy, but I was thinking of sort of interesting use of description, and then realized that these three are not happy moments. But these techniques would work perfectly well with something sunnier, with something humorous, something lighter. What we've got here, this is setting, it's a description of a place, but we're zoomed way, way out now. In The Butler, we had this brief sort of somebody waking up and all we are in is this very small, bare room. Here, all of a sudden, we've got a space that's an entire city, and we've got a space that's existing in multiple timelines. So again, ways to sort of convey a lot of information to a reader, or really evoke a lot. A whole place, but then how that place has changed. And when we talk about setting or we talk about setting descriptions, it often just immediately sounds boring. Or we talk about sort of writing about place, I think it's easy to imagine, all right, it's sort of a piece of static nature writing, like it's a walk in the woods, and here's some descriptions of the trees, and here's some descriptions of the flowers. And it's just this picture postcard. And that's what people mean when you're asked to describe a setting or you're asked to describe a place. And you can do that. And you can do that in very beautiful lyrical ways, or very sort of gritty ways. But more interesting is to think about sort of what else you can do when you write about setting. So static's sort of non-interactive, like an image on a postcard. We think about like sort of just two-dimensional. You're painting a picture for the reader, and here it is. It's just, there's a frame around it. It's this one scene, this one moment in time that I'm sort of painting for you with words. And you can do that really well. I mean, that can be done well or poorly, and it can be done very well. But your sort of ambition is very constrained in that type of description. Thinking about, all right, how do you kind of break that outside the bounds of that picture postcard, or that little paragraph where you're just like, okay, here's the place. Activated setting, interactive for characters and the reader. So in The Butler, the setting is very, very spare, but our character's interacting with it. And she's interacting with it, she's looking around. The interaction is not like crazy, she's just sort of exploring. But we get to explore it with her, and we get to sort of understand how she feels about that place. In Beirut, these characters are not just watching the city go by, they're actively living in the city, and this city is a difficult place to live. There's happy moments here, happy memories, just sort of normal moments, James Bond, but there is a degree of conflict and of violence and the risk of violence. So this is not just the postcard version of Beirut, this is people living in Beirut. Activated setting in time, before and after, which is very much something Freeman's doing in this poem. People living in Beirut, not just in a particular moment, but people living in Beirut before and now. Lots of places. That rusting water tower collapsing on its ruin was the movie theater where you sat in smoky consternation while James Bond lit his cigarettes. There's a before and an after. This mirrored shopping mall selling push-up jeans and gleaming watches used to be the market where you could buy Zatar for small change. Another before and after, and it kind of complicates the first one. So this isn't a narrative like, oh, the city used to be beautiful and now it's kind of all gone to hell, like the movie theater is a rusting water tower. In some ways, maybe it's gotten nice. This mirrored shopping mall, but it replaced the market. So it's not just this one, oh, everything just went downhill, or everything is really nice now. It's complicated. Certain things seem like a loss. Certain things are maybe to some people an advantage, maybe to some people not. So, and then here are these places where moments of violence happened. The last stanza, this corner where the sea shines in the near distance. So there's also other moments where things stay the same. Not that something's been sort of gotten rid of, but that there are certain kind of pole stars that exist in multiple timelines. So that's where we sort of also get, this is even another layer of complexity in this particular poem. Activated setting through time, not just before, after, but before becomes after, becomes before, becomes after, as characters remember, as they maybe miss certain things, as they feel nostalgia, as they feel hopefulness, as they feel, despair or fear, as they react to the setting in some way. And when we think about sort of number 3, 2, 1, any kind of dystopian novel or movie, any kind of like any zombie, anything, part of the power of like something like The Walking Dead is that we know how things are supposed to look. If you just show kind of a ruined house or an empty neighborhood or a wrecked store, you can describe the way that that store has been like wrecked or ransacked or just damaged and like the roof's falling in. But if we understand how it used to look, if we understand the kind of lives that used to be lived there, that contrast is where a lot of that power comes from. Not just how does it look now, how does that moment relate to things that happened before? How might that moment relate to things that are maybe going to happen after? Where else is this place going to go? What else is this place maybe going to look like? And then, okay. So what I would like to do, really quickly, you all have paper. If you could write down 3 items. This is going to be sort of a short writing exercise. 3 things that somebody might have on like a bedside table or beside their bed. 1 is ordinary. 1 is unexpected. And 1 is perishable. Something that could go bad or go rotten or that needs to be used within some certain amount of time. Something ordinary, something unexpected, something perishable. And then I want you to this is up to you. You can either trade items with somebody else. So you are giving these items away to see what someone else does with them. Or you can keep them. But write about the person you think owns these items, the person who owns that bedside table or sleeps in that bed, the person who put these 3 items there beside them. So just starting with details, start building out a description of who that person might be. I'm just going to have you write for a couple minutes, and whatever you come up with is fine. You can finish your sentence, finish your thought. Yeah. Write about, so just write about whoever you think owns these items. There's nothing else interesting. So I'm going to mute it. What were some of your weird items? Just what were the unexpected objects? A jewel box? Jeweled box. Yeah. Okay, somebody's mother's ashes. Yes. In the back. Paper? Okay. Yeah. Dentures. Okay. Yeah. Fire extinguisher. Oof, yeah. Other things. Yeah. Checkbook. Nice. Well, and I like a lot of these, again, are specific to the character. Like, I can see a character where having their dentures by the bed is they wear dentures, they're of that age, like that's it's right here. Somebody else that might be like a really strange thing to have by their bed. So I love the specificity of a lot of these. Like I can already see kind of the dentures floating by the bed, or the ashes or the jeweled box. And then I'm already curious with some of these about who the person is. The other thing some of these are doing is starting to hint at maybe a plot or a course of action, or ways that the details, we talked a lot about setting, we talked a lot about character, but description is also, a big part of plot in terms of, your reader understanding why things are happening. And plot both if you're creating one for a novel or a short story, or if you're describing a series of events that really happened. A lot of the sort of whys of that, the who, what, when, where, why of those events are rooted in description and in detail. So the fire extinguisher suggests to me, something's going to happen maybe with that fire extinguisher. There's a reason that fire extinguisher is there, and or it's going to be called upon. And I think that the relationship of description to plot is something that you see in that last excerpt on the handout, which is from Game of Thrones. 6.5 feet tall, he towered over lesser men. When he donned the armor and great antlered helmet of his house, he became a veritable giant. He had a giant strength, too, his weapon of choice, a spiked iron warhammer that Ned could scarcely lift. In those days, the smell of leather and blood had clung to him like perfume. Now it was perfume that clung to him like perfume, and he had a girth to match his height. A beard as coarse and black, wrong spelling of course, and black as iron covered his jaw to hide his double chin and the sag of his royal jowls, but nothing could hide his stomach or the dark circles under his eyes. Character detail through time, not just how someone looks now, but how they used to look. And that gap between him then and him now is, of course, a source of huge conflict and threat and vulnerability. That, because he's sort of gotten soft and like taken his eye off the ball, a lot of bad things are going to happen to this character and to Ned and to other people in the books. So we have just a couple minutes. Any questions? Anything else you want to ask? All right, go forth, write awesome descriptions. Thank you so much for being here.